the courage to live quietly. Some people battle storms. Some fight wars. And some, like Orin, simply try to survive their own mind. For them, living itself is an act of courage. Orin wasn't the kind of person anyone would notice. He never entered a room loudly. He never walked with confidence. He never spoke with a kind of voice that made others turn. Instead, he moved quietly, almost apologetically, as if he felt he was taking up space that didn't belong to him. He felt invisible. Not because people hated him, but because they never saw him. At work, he blended into the walls. At home, he blended into the silence. In public, he blended into the crowd. Some days, he didn't know which hurt more, being ignored or feeling like he deserved to be. But life has a way of pushing even the quietest souls toward their breaking point. For Orin, it began on a cold morning in December. The world was rushing, busy, impatient. And Orin felt, once again, like he was drifting through the noise, unseen, unheard, unneeded. He carried those feelings like heavy stones in his chest. Depression didn't knock loudly. It whispered. And its whispers told him he didn't matter. But the universe has strange timing. Sometimes, all it takes is one small moment, one gentle human act, to change everything. That morning, as Orin walked into his office building, his hands were shaking from the cold. The elevator doors were about to close when someone called out, "Wait!" Orin instinctively reached forward and held the door. A woman hurried in, breathing heavily. "Thank you," she said with a grateful smile. "If I missed this elevator, I'd be late again. You really saved me." Orin blinked, surprised. "Oh, no problem." She placed a hand on his arm. "Really? You made my morning easier." Made my morning. Such simple words. But they hit Orin differently. It had been so long since anyone acknowledged his existence. Even longer since someone thanked him sincerely. For a moment, the weight in his chest loosened. The world didn't feel quite as cold. Sometimes, the smallest kindness can awaken someone who has been asleep inside their own sadness. Orin spent the entire day replaying that moment. Her smile. Her gratitude. Her simple recognition that he existed. It stirred something in him, a spark he thought had died years ago. That evening, staring into his bathroom mirror, Orin whispered, "Maybe I'm not invisible." His reflection didn't argue. It simply stared back, as if waiting for him to believe his own words. And for the first time in a long time, he wanted to. The next morning, Orin made a decision. Nothing dramatic. Nothing grand. Just one small step. He would speak once during the team meeting. One sentence. That was the goal. As the meeting began, he sat quietly, listening to everyone else's voices bouncing around the room. His heart thudded against his ribs. His palms were damp. When his supervisor asked, "Does anyone have ideas for improving workflow?" Orin inhaled sharply. This was it. I have a suggestion," he said, barely above a whisper. Everyone looked at him. Real eyes. Real attention. His voice shook, but he continued. He explained a small change that could save time on client reports. Nothing special. Nothing revolutionary. But when he finished, the room was silent for a second, and then someone said, "That's actually a really good idea." Another added, "Yeah, we should try that." His supervisor nodded. "Great input, Orin." "Thank you." "Thank you." Again, that phrase. Again, that spark. He left the meeting with shaking hands, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From excitement. From something warm waking up inside him. Orin didn't become fearless overnight. Self-doubt still crept in. Silence still felt safer. But he started choosing courage, tiny acts of courage, every day. He spoke up once. He made eye contact once. He walked into a room without shrinking his shoulders. He accepted compliments instead of deflecting them. He allowed himself to exist without apology. These weren't big victories. But for Orin, they were mountains. And mountains are climbed one small step at a time. A month later, his supervisor approached him unexpectedly. "Orin, I've noticed your contributions lately. Would you like to assist on the new client project? You'd handle the presentation outline." Presentation? Orin's stomach flipped. His old fears rose instantly. What if he stuttered? What if people judged him? What if he froze? But then he remembered the elevator moment. The meeting. The spark. And he thought, if I could survive my darkest days, I can survive a presentation. So he said yes. For weeks, he prepared. He practiced at home. He wrote, deleted, rewrote, improved. He pushed through fear with quiet determination. When the day came, he stood before a group of executives, hands trembling lightly but mind steady. He delivered his part, not perfectly, but authentically. And when he finished, the room applauded. His supervisor clapped him on the back. "Great job, Orin." Great job. Two words that meant the world. From then on, Orin continued to grow. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But steadily. He became someone others trusted. Someone teammates asked for help. Someone friends began to rely on. Someone his younger self would never believe he could become. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the center of attention. But he was strong. And strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes it's simply the willingness to keep living when your mind tells you to disappear. Living itself became his act of courage. 1 year later, Orin received an unexpected email. "You've been invited to speak at our employee wellness seminar about overcoming self-doubt." He read it 3 times in disbelief. Him? Speak? To a crowd? The old fear flickered. The new strength burned brighter. At the event, he stepped onto the small stage. Dozens of eyes looked up at him. A year ago, he wouldn't have survived this moment. Now, he welcomed it. He began, voice soft but steady. "I used to think I was invisible. Not because people hated me, but because I didn't believe my existence mattered. Every day felt heavy. Every step felt like a fight. But sometimes living itself is an act of courage. And every small act of kindness can bring someone back to life." He shared his journey, his invisibility, the elevator kindness, the meetings, the growth, the fear, the small steps. The room listened closely. Not because he was loud, but because he was real. When he finished, the audience stood and applauded. Some people had tears in their eyes. One young man came to him later and whispered, "Your story saved me today." Orin felt his heart ache in the best way possible. He had once wanted to disappear. Now he was helping others stay. This was his loud success. Not through noise, through meaning. Walking home that evening, Orin looked up at the sky, feeling a quiet pride expand in his chest. He had survived. He had risen. He had found his fire. And he understood something profound. You don't need a dramatic life to be a warrior. You don't need fame to matter. You don't need noise to be powerful. Sometimes, simply continuing, simply breathing, trying, waking up, showing up is the greatest courage a person can have. He wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't forgotten. He wasn't small. He was living. And living, he finally realized, is an act of courage.